You are standing beside a fire, somewhere before history had a name. No laws, no bottles, no pills, no smoke shops. No one has invented the word drug, and the first person to get high probably was not trying to get high. They were probably just hungry. Maybe they ate fruit that had been lying in the sun too long. Maybe they breathed smoke from the wrong kind of leaves. Maybe they chewed a bitter root, because caution matters less when your stomach is empty. At first, no one understood what had happened. The fear got softer. The fire looked brighter. Someone laughed when nothing was funny. Someone stared at the shadows, like the shadows had suddenly started making sense, and maybe that was the first dangerous discovery. Not a product. Not a crime, not a weekend habit, a mistake, a survival decision, a hungry human body, accidentally discovering that the mind could be changed. Before weed was weed, before alcohol was alcohol, before drugs became medicine, addiction, business, or law, an ancient human may have realized something terrifying. The outside world was not the only world they could alter. There was another world, inside the head, and somehow that world could be opened. And the strange part is this is not only a guess, because later, archaeologists would find traces of ancient fermented drink inside a burial cave, cannabis smoke inside a mountain cemetery, and tobacco seeds near an ancient hearth, which means the first high we can actually see was not hiding in a party. It was hiding near fire, near ritual, near grief, and sometimes near the dead. So the question is not just did ancient humans get high? The better question is, why do the oldest clues keep showing up in places where people were trying to survive? Fear, loss, and the unknown. But first, we have to remove one modern idea. Ancient humans did not have a category called drugs that is a modern box. Today, we separate everything: medicine, poison, crime, treatment, recreation, addiction. But for most of human history, a plant was not a drug. A plant was a question. Can I eat this? Will it stop pain? Will it make me sick? Will it kill me? Will it do something I do not have words for yet? Which is a dangerous way to read nature. But to be fair, they did not have Google. That was the ancient laboratory. No glass tubes. No warning labels. No tiny voice saying, maybe do not put that in your mouth. Just hunger, pain, curiosity, and memory. Someone tried something. Something happened, the group remembered. And slowly, nature became more than a landscape. It became a map of hidden switches. And the first hidden switch may have been discovered by accident. The first high probably did not begin with a ceremony. It probably did not begin with a shaman standing under the moon, explaining the spiritual meaning of fermented fruit. Ancient humans were not giving lectures beside mammoth bones. More likely, it began with a mistake. Imagine a group walking through a hot landscape. They are tired, hungry, low on options. Then they find fruit on the ground. It is soft, too soft. The skin is broken. The smell is strange, a little sour, a little rotten. Nobody is checking the expiration date. There is no expiration date. There is only fruit and the ancient math of hunger. So someone eats it, then another person eats it. A little later, the group feels different. The body feels warmer. The tongue feels looser. The fear moves further away. Someone laughs too loudly. Someone becomes extremely confident about a plan the group should absolutely not follow. No one knows the word alcohol. No one knows what yeast is. No one understands fermentation. But nature does not need humans to understand it. Yeast only needs sugar, time, and the right conditions. Before humans invented alcohol, nature was already running the first brewery. And this is the important part. The first time, it was an accident. The second time, someone remembered. The third time, someone looked for the same fruit again. That is how an accident becomes a pattern. And when a pattern can be repeated, it becomes knowledge. The first high may have been the first remembered accident, but fruit was only one doorway. The other doorway was already glowing in the dark. There was also fire. Once humans learned to live with fire, they did not just change what they ate, they changed what they breathed. Every fire filled the air, most of the time. That meant ordinary smoke, the kind that burns your eyes, catches in your throat, and somehow follows you around the fire, no matter where you sit, as if prehistoric smoke had a personal problem with you. But not every plant burns the same way. Some leaves smell sweet, some bark makes people cough, some smoke keeps insects away, some smoke makes people sick, and some smoke may have made the night feel different. No one needed chemistry, they only needed to notice when we burn this plant. Something happens. Fire did not just cook food, it turned the air into an experiment, and once smoke became interesting, the story moved from accident to ritual. But stories are not enough. So where does the evidence actually begin? It would be easy to assume beer belonged to farming. First you grow grain, then you settle down, then you make bread. Then eventually, someone gets bored enough to invent beer. Nice story, probably too neat, because one of the oldest clear clues of fermented drink does not come from a farming village. It does not come from a bar. It comes from a burial cave at Rakafet Cave in what is now Israel. Researchers studied ancient stone mortars used by Natufian people around 13,000 years ago. And those stones suggested something surprising: fermented drink, not in a city, not in a tavern, not in a kingdom, with taxes, grain prices, and someone complaining that the beer is too expensive now. This was before farming fully took over human life. And the setting matters, because this was connected to burial, to ritual, to people gathering near the dead. That is the twist. Before beer became ordinary, it may already have been sacred. Before it became something people drank after work, it may have belonged to a much older moment, a group near death, trying to change the emotional temperature of the living, trying to turn grief into ceremony, trying to make loss bearable. So one of the oldest clear answers to this question does not look like a party, it looks like a cave. Stone mortars, a grave, and people using altered feeling to face the hardest thing humans have ever faced: loss. And this was only the first clue, because another one was hiding, not in a cave, but high in the mountains. And now we get to the question everyone is secretly waiting for. High before weed? Yes, and also no, if by weed you mean the modern thing, a couch, a lighter, and snacks arranged like emotional support. Then no. Ancient humans did not have that world. But if by weed you mean cannabis as a plant that could change consciousness, then humans have known about it for a very long time. And the clearest ancient cannabis smoke clue does not come from a party. It comes from a cemetery in the Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, at an ancient burial site. Researchers found wooden braziers, heated stones, and chemical traces of cannabis smoke. The site dates to around 2,500 years ago. This was not someone relaxing after a long day of spear maintenance. This was a funeral setting, a ritual, a moment when people stood close to death and used smoke to cross a boundary, the boundary between living and dead, between ordinary life and the sacred, between the world people could touch and the world they could only imagine. That changes the question for many ancient people. Altered states were not entertainment first. They were access. Access to ancestors, access to healing, access to courage, access to the invisible. So yes, humans were using mind-changing plants long before modern weed culture, but the purpose was often very different. This was not a hobby. This was smoke, rising beside the dead. And the strange thing is, this was not only found in the ground. Someone actually wrote about something like this long ago. This is where the story gets stranger, because one ancient writer described something that sounded almost too weird to trust. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote about the Scythians, a nomadic people from the Eurasian steppe. He described them throwing hemp onto hot stones, sitting inside the smoke and crying out with pleasure for a long time. That sounded like the kind of ancient travel story, where someone sees one weird thing and turns it into 10 weird things. You can almost imagine a modern reader thinking, sure, Herodotus, that definitely happened. But then archaeology started finding something familiar. Braziers, hot stones, hemp residue. Suddenly, the story did not sound so ridiculous. The ancient writer may not have been inventing a myth. He may have been describing a real smoke ritual. And that matters, because it gives us a mini version of the whole story. First, a strange claim, then modern doubt, then objects in the ground quietly saying, maybe the strange claim was not so strange after all. By the time people were writing these stories down, humans were not just accidentally discovering altered states anymore. They were building spaces for them. Tents, stones, smoke, rules, ritual. The accident had become a system, and another plant would later show how old this relationship really was. And then there is tobacco. Today, that word carries a heavy shadow. Cigarettes, addiction, disease, companies' warning labels, but tobacco did not begin as a cigarette. The oldest tobacco clue is not a cigarette at all. It is tiny seeds near an ancient fire in North America. Archaeologists found ancient tobacco seeds inside a hearth in Uda, dating back around 12,000 years. That does not mean someone was taking a cigarette break. Beside an Ice Age campfire, nobody was taking a cigarette break. From Ice Age paperwork, it means something more careful and more interesting. Humans were interacting with tobacco far earlier than many people once thought. Maybe they burned it, maybe they chewed it, maybe they used it in ritual, maybe the exact purpose is gone forever, but the plant was there. Near fire, near people, inside the human story. And that matters, because in many indigenous cultures, tobacco was not just casual pleasure. Smoke could carry prayer, seal agreements, bless people, protect spaces, speak to the unseen. The same plant can be a messenger in one world and a machine of addiction in another. So the story is not only about substances. It is about what humans build around them. And once you see that, the question changes again. Why would humans keep looking for ways to change the mind? Modern people often imagine altered states as something you take: a drink, a smoke, a pill, a plant. But ancient humans also discovered something else. The body itself could change the mind. If a group dances long enough, chants long enough, fasts long enough, breathes hard enough, or stays awake deep into the night, the body can begin to shift reality by itself. No bottle. No smoke, no plant, just rhythm, exhaustion, breath, and a group moving as one. This matters because the ancient search for altered consciousness was bigger than substances. Humans were not only asking what plant can change the mind, they were also asking what can the body do to itself. A drum beat could pull people into rhythm, a dance could make the body forget where the individual ended. And the group began. A night without sleep could make ordinary reality bend slightly, a fast could turn hunger into vision, and no, nobody was skipping dinner for a wellness trend. They were trying to cross a line from fear to courage, from grief to meaning, from separate bodies to one group. So the first high may not have been only chemical. Sometimes, the body taught the brain a new trick. This is why ritual mattered. Altered states were powerful, but they were also dangerous. Ancient does not mean safe, and natural does not mean harmless. A plant can grow from the earth and still kill you. A mushroom can look ordinary and still destroy your body from the inside. A smoke can feel sacred and still damage your lungs. A root can reduce pain or stop your heart. Ancient humans learned through trial and error. But trial and error with powerful plants was not cute. It was vomiting, panic, confusion, terror, sometimes death, and then, if anyone survived, memory. That is probably why many cultures surrounded powerful substances, with rules: who could use them, when, where, with whom, how much, for what purpose, and who had to watch. Those rules were not decoration, they were protection. Ritual was not just drama. Ritual was risk control. An elder grabbing a child's wrist, a warning story told near the fire. A plant placed away from ordinary food. A ceremony that says, not today, not alone, not like that. The ancient story is not. People found plants and had fun. It is darker than that. They found forces inside nature that could heal, terrify, connect, mislead, and destroy. And slowly, they learned that changing consciousness was never something to treat casually. And then humans did something very human. They turned the sacred into something sellable. Fermented drink became an industry. Sacred smoke became a cigarette. Plant medicine became a market. A ceremony became branding. That does not mean ancient use was always pure. Ancient people made mistakes too. They overused things, misunderstood things, feared things. They were human. But the container mattered. An elder says, only here, only now, only with the group watching. A market says, anywhere, anytime, buy another one. That is the difference. One system tries to limit the experience. The other tries to repeat it forever. A ritual tells you this is not ordinary. This has a time, a place, a witness, a purpose, a limit. A product tells you something very different. Use me whenever you want. Buy me again. Come back tomorrow. Make this feeling repeatable. And that is a huge change, because the first high may have been discovery, a mistake remembered. A sacred tool, a medicine, a way to hold grief, a way to bond the group, but the modern high was often turned into business. Not always, not every substance, not every person, but again and again. Humans found something that changed the mind, and someone else found a way to sell that change back to them. The ancient world discovered the door, the modern world learned how to sell the key. So when did ancient humans first get high? The honest answer is we do not know, and we may never know, because the first altered state probably left nothing behind. A feeling does not fossilize. A strange dream does not become a tool. A night of laughter, fear, visions, or confusion does not usually survive in the ground. What survives are traces, stone mortars, burned seeds, ancient hearths, residue on objects, smoke marks, burial tools, tiny clues, around something much harder to see: the human mind. But those clues tell us something important. By the time we can clearly see altered states in archaeology, they are already meaningful, already connected to ritual, to death, to smoke, to plants, to bodies moving together, to groups, to memory. So the first high was probably not a modern style choice. Not a product, not a crime, not a lifestyle. It was probably older, stranger, and more human. Maybe old fruit, maybe smoke, maybe medicine, maybe rhythm, maybe hunger, maybe pain, maybe grief, but whatever it was. One thing seems clear. Humans did not invent the desire to change consciousness in the modern world. The modern world only renamed it. So maybe the first high was not rebellion. Maybe it was not addiction. Maybe it was not even pleasure. Maybe it was a hungry person eating fruit that had changed under the sun. Maybe it was a healer burning leaves over hot stones. Maybe it was a grieving family standing beside the dead. Maybe it was a group dancing in the dark until fear became rhythm, and the night felt less impossible. However it began, The discovery was enormous. The mind was not fixed. It could bend, it could deceive, it could heal, it could break. And once humans learned that, they never stopped testing the boundary, from ancient fruit to strange smoke to burial caves to sacred plants to rhythm to fasting to modern bottles, pills, cigarettes, markets. And laws. The story was never only about drugs, it was about humans discovering that inside the skull there was another world, a world that could hurt, a world that could dream, a world that could trap them, and sometimes a world they tried to open. Long before humans learned how to control the world outside them, they were already searching for ways to change the world inside their own heads.